Good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Clinton. I work for Kelly Services. I am the Senior Director of our Business Intelligence organization. So I manage our BI Enterprise Data Warehouse, and now we're wrapping analytics into our function. So I'm curious, when people saw this title, what they thought. I don't know if the brochure had any information or what you were thinking this would come in, but we wanted to talk a little bit about what we think is a BI success story, and actually an analytics success story at Kelly Services. A real life story about how IT partnered with our business, as well as our external customers, and also introduced some new technology to deliver a new product that differentiates Kelly in our marketplace. So I introduced myself and introduce my colleague here.
Hi, I'm Mark Kryska. I work for Dan here in the Business Intelligence Competency Center. Been there for the last year and a half, and I spent the majority of my career in business intelligence or enterprise intelligence.
Thanks, Mark. So our agenda today, we'll do we introduce ourselves. We're going to introduce Kelly Services, a quick infomercial. Show of hands of people who've heard of Kelly Services. Anybody ever worked for Kelly Services as a temp or contractor? Okay, I see a couple. Great. Then I'm going to introduce a couple of concepts that will kind of tee up the discussion around the business problem that we were running into. And then Mark is going to run us through the solution that we built, which leverages a number of technologies. Most importantly, Tableau. I see Dave Wysocki here, our account manager, so he knows all about it. And then Mark will also walk you through a demo of the technology we built, which we think is pretty cool. And we've gotten some feedback from Tableau on some of the cutting edge stuff we've done. So we're also willing to take any questions. We've saved some time at the end, 10 to 15 minutes to take questions, but if there's something burning, feel free to shout it out or raise your hand, and we'll try and answer it then.
No, it's working a moment ago.
Okay. So a little bit about Kelly Services, and most people have raised their hands and they've heard of it. Kelly Services is a staffing firm that was founded in Detroit in 1946 by William Kelly, who saw a niche market that was not being served during the post-World War II manufacturing boom, and that was to staff temporary workers. So he started off in Detroit with about 2 customers and 3 temps that were mostly secretarial or admin clerical. Now, nearly 70 years later, that 2-customer, 3-person shop has turned into a global organization of almost 9,000 employees, operating in 30 countries, $5.5 billion in revenue. And in a given year, we put about 550,000 people to work for our customers. Let's see what we do. As a staffing company, we've evolved from just doing staffing to do workforce solutions. So what does that mean? It means doing more than just light industrial and commercial, where you've got pickers and packers and warehouse workers, to high-end PT. So we have an IT practice, we have a science practice, an engineering practice, a legal practice, an education practice. Our highest paid temp last year made $350,000. We've also moved into workforce solutions, which is our outsourcing consulting group. So that's BPO, business process outsourcing. So we take over warehouse facilities and those types of things and run it start to finish. Our RPO practice is our recruitment process outsourcing group, where many groups outsource the whole talent acquisition process to Kelly. We also have a call center outsourcing. Our largest client is Apple. If you have a Mac or an iPad or any other Apple device and you have to call them for help, there's I think a 1 in 30 chance that you're talking to a virtual Kelly Services employee who's staffed somewhere in their home who works for Apple to do troubleshooting. So that's about it for what we do. I think there are a couple of interesting points. So this is a quote from Staffing Industry Review, which is a trade journal, that was talking about Kelly Services. And it says Kelly Services provides products and services to 90% of the Fortune 500 companies and 99% of the Fortune 100 companies. So a very large, broad-based customer base. I was reading an article on LinkedIn the other day, which I thought was interesting. It said that they had polled a bunch of the top employers in the country about what's the best way to get in the door. They said, well, the number one way is to get a referral from a trusted, successful employee. The number two way is start with a temp staffing job and then prove yourself and get hired. So not a lot of people think of temp staffing firms as, you know, a way to get into to an employer of choice. But again, I thought that was interesting. So a couple concepts I wanted to talk about, and again, I'll tee up kind of the technology solution that we implemented. And that is contingent workforce outsourcing. So that's one of the products we sell. And it's basically a process and a framework for managing contingent labor. So what is contingent labor? Well, it's the traditional temps that you think about. It's your 1099 employees. It's your alumni and retirees that more and more companies are trying to retain their alumni in a part-time role. Could be guest workers. Could be statement of work, project-based work. The challenge is if you think about in your own companies, who's involved in hiring people? Well, there's HR, of course, but they tend to want to do permanent only, our full-time employees. Then you have procurement that'll get involved in some contracts with 1099 folks or consultants or statement of work. And then you've got your operations managers who many are empowered to go out and sign deals. I'm going to bring in a temp and pay them out of my budget. I'm going to hire IBM Global Services for $1 million deal to fix this problem for me. So there's a very fragmented view of the contingent workforce. Our largest customers have in excess of $1 to $2 billion in contingent labor spend every year. So you think about that, it's pretty big. And without visibility into visibility into what we're spending, where are we spending with, who are our top suppliers, are we getting good deals, are we negotiating? You know, are we getting the going rate? Are we overpaying or underpaying? So there's a lot of reasons why companies wanted visibility into this, you know, sometimes rogue spend. And that's kind of the concept of contingent workforce outsourcing. The next concept I'll mention is it says managed system, but it's really vendor management systems. These are third-party software as a service tools that are proliferating in the market today to help companies manage this spend. So there's a bunch of them out there. Fieldglass, IQN, PeopleFluent, Beeline, there's a bunch more. But companies are leveraging those tools to help manage those programs. Now, we're a partner with many of those tool providers, but also competitor, because our customers may go out and acquire those tools on their own. And what they do is run everything, the whole process of finding, screening, onboarding, paying, billing for these folks that are running through their contingent labor pool. So, last concept, and then we'll talk about the business problem. Talent supply chain management. So, think about this as similar to a traditional manufacturing supply chain. You've got inputs and outputs. You need to secure your raw materials, your commodities to deliver your product. For many, especially well, could be manufacturing, could be services, but a talent supply chain is very similar in that you have to acquire the skills and the experience to deliver your products and services. It helps align a company's workforce with what they're trying to accomplish. And some of the questions that talent supply chain management helps answer is, what does the workforce supply look like? Where is the demand from my customers geographically? What rate should I be paying a .NET developer in Malaysia versus New York City? So we've got all of that data. The challenge for us, and now I'll get to the problem, is that for Kelly Services, we have, approaching 100 different CWO programs, many of them running through the tools, and again, the VMS tools. So the data for all is there, but it lives in the cloud. And again, you got different vendors, so they've got different configurations, they have different naming standards. Even with our own programs, they had different naming standards, different ways of calculating our key metrics, different ways of using fields. There's lots of ways to do custom fields. So if you think of that, we identified, we saw the problem. Our customers told us about the problem is, we're delivering historical data. You're telling me what happened. Well, I know what happened. You're counting things, how much, how many, what, where, when. That's good, but it's not good enough. If you want to be recognized as a true trusted advisor and a partner of ours, you need to tell us more. You need to move upstream from descriptive, what happened, to the predictive, why did it happen, to the prescriptive is what do I do about it. So again, the problem that we had is we had 70 different programs. We had 200 different fields that went into calculating our half a dozen key metrics that drove success or failure of a program. So you multiply 70 times 200 and you start to see the challenge of a lot of data that's non-standard. You can't aggregate it. Our customers were asking for benchmarking. How do I look against my competitors, against the industry and what I'm paying? My cycle time, my onboarding time, the duration of the employee staying. So we looked at what the possibilities were. We determined that we needed to pull the data in from all of these third-party providers, put it into a central data repository. We needed to start implementing and enforcing the standards so that we could start doing aggregation and benchmarking. More of a challenge than we thought. We're a year plus into the project. Hasn't been without its bumps and bruises, trying to explain to the business why you need to settle on standards. And eventually they recognized that. They said, oh, if we want to be able to go to our customers and say, here's how you look against your competitors, your industry, then we need to do the aggregation. And you'll never get to 100% standard in this type of area, but if we can get to 70% standard, then we can do some mappings within our warehouse environment. So we have a Teradata-based enterprise data warehouse. We have Cognos as our enterprise reporting package, but then we needed something that we could do rapid prototyping with. The business can't always articulate exactly what it is that they want. So what Tableau allowed us to do was, in the pricing model, allowed us to kick this off with relatively small investment up front, because the way I looked at it, it was a proof of concept. We weren't sure if we could actually do it, given all the complexities of the data, trying to map hundreds of fields to a single standard, trying to maintain control of the programs so we could configure the third-party tools at any point in time they wanted. So we brought Tableau in and we were able to quickly create prototypes. We could put something tangible in front of our business executives and say, is this what you're thinking? And they'd say, yes, but I want this, and I want this, and I want to change this. But it made it tangible. We didn't sit down with a whiteboard and say, so what do you want? So how do we solve your problem? So I think they really appreciated us being proactive and saying, how do we solve this problem, and putting something there in front of them where they could actually look at it, touch it, feel it, play with it, and then they started thinking. So we've been through multiple iterations with the Tableau dashboards.
And I think I've talked about most of the problems that we've seen. Customers told us
we need more. The other thing I'll point out is the original reporting coming directly out of the tools was very manual intensive. There was a lot of manipulation of the data in Excel, and they delivered to the customers, but our customers had access to the tools. So they're saying, well, how come what you just gave me in this Excel spreadsheet doesn't match what I'm pulling with the native reporting tools? And it's kind of hard to answer. So all of a sudden your conversation is derailed from talking about the numbers and the results to, Why isn't the data the same? And the other piece was to get our customer-facing field folks out of the business of spending 80% of the time pulling data and manipulating and dumping it into PowerPoints and then presenting. Flip that equation to they should be spending 20% of their time pulling data together in presentations and 8% of their time analyzing it, so that they can go to their customer and say, here's a trend that we're seeing, and here's what we think the cause of that is, and then they can drill and have a conversation about cause and effect versus your numbers aren't right or they don't match. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to talk a little bit about the solution and the actual technology that we implement.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Any questions before I turn it over to Mark? Any comments? Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. I was wondering how much business acumen did you have to have in the IC group to be able to put the base data together?
Good question. A fair amount.
Right.
To understand, again, to bridge that chasm to say, okay, I'm a technologist, how do I understand what the business is? We have some very good, call them BAs or functional analysts. And in my previous role before the BI, I was the BRM. So I was the relationship manager or liaison between the IT organization and our business executive. So I direct to the CIO, dotted line to the EVP of our business. But yeah, I mean, that's something we always strive for our folks to learn more of, to get closer to the business, to kind of live the challenges so that we can be proactive in thinking about, we're not waiting, we're not order takers, we're not waiting for a problem to come up. We know enough to say, hey, we see you're struggling here, here's a possible solution. Because again, they don't always know what's possible, what technologies are out there. Now, a lot of them will say, hey, I saw this at a trade show, I want this. You know, I had a senior executive come to me and say, hey, I was at the seminar and I saw Tableau and Hadoop. I think we need Hadoop. What is it? But let's talk about what it is and what it isn't. But thanks for the question. I hope that answered.
All right, so the solution, and just to kind of catch you up where we're at, we've got, at this point, we've got our 70 programs living in all very different areas, and in the cloud's essentially a software as a service. And we've got great BI people who can do business intelligence, and we've got great operations people who work with our customers. But at the point, there's a big disconnect between all of them because that data doesn't live in our warehouse at the moment. So how we solve it? The way we wanted to solve it is we wanted to empower our business people and our operations teams. We've got people who really know their customer. They know what our customers value, and they understand their industry. And we wanted to get tools that we could put into their hands. So we wanted to involve them more in the development process. One of the big priorities was going to be that whatever capabilities we deliver them immediately. Speed was a primary factor because our customers are already coming to us and saying, it's enough. We want more than reporting, we want intelligence. One of the ways we had to solve it was integrating all 70 of these programs at once. So taking these 70 separate sources where sometimes there's multiple instances run in very different ways, we had to get them all together. So something had to be able to be done with that, and it had to be done quickly. We couldn't wait for it all to, wait for the full development cycle of putting into our data warehouse before we could actually present our analytics. Another big part we wanted to be able to do was data enrichment. So being able to take these 70 sources together, we also wanted to add some third-party data. We thought it was going to be important that we be able to present our data with something they can benchmark and compare against that's not just Kelly. So we want to show them something an outside source has on rates or suppliers or spend. Also, we needed to be able to aggregate and standardize our data, so that was going to be a big part of our data enrichment as well, because to compare across programs, we're going to have some standards in place. We need to find the right business intelligence tools. So when we went to go find the right business intelligence tools, we wanted something that's going to be able to develop visualizations, Dashboarding was a term that was being thrown around a lot, so we wanted to be able to do that. And then we wanted to be able to present the right analysis, so we had to have some flexibility on what we could deliver. Also, ease of use was probably our #1 priority. Working with our operations people and our business users, there are more non-technical users, so no matter what tool we gave to them, the development framework is going to have a very short learning curve, because they're going to need to be able to learn it fast and use it fast. We wanted to enable the data blending so that we can do all the enrichment we spoke about, and then we also wanted to really be able to do some prototyping. My experience working with some of our business and operations people is they have a difficult time verbalizing exactly what they want, but they can do a great job of when I show them something, say to me, that's not right, or hey, that's perfect on this one, that's perfect on this one, put them together. Who met our needs? So after going through a tool review, we found it's Tableau who meets our needs. One of the primary reasons for choosing them, again, was ease of use. We already had a business intelligence tool and data warehouse in place, but it's our view that there is no single silver bullet solution for this. And actually, when we look at ease of use, if you look at Gartner's review of Tableau, it shows them as in that magic quadrant as the #1. Our requirements were to empower business users, enable data interactions. So what we also liked about Tableau is that enabled data interactions. So there's a very nice touch and feel with the tool, whether you're on a desktop or laptop, like we'll show you here in a moment, or if you're on a tablet, it's got its own look and feel as well. It's got a great touch and move kind of feel to it. So the tool lent itself nicely to both our needs, which were to have it on desktops and laptops and tablets as well. It definitely met our short-term need for speed. One of the nice things about Tableau was that we didn't have to wait for a fully developed data warehouse before we began to build what we wanted. We were able to start moving with it on day one. At the same time, we were building in parallel our data warehouse. And it also lent itself nicely to our long-term solutions, which may end up being some mix of both Cognos and Tableau together. Demo time. So let me see here. Oh. You know what? I'm going to escape from this. So the tool I'm showing you here today is the tool we've delivered to our operations users. It's got some great capabilities. It's available both through tablets, laptops, desktops, and any mobile device, essentially. Realistically, we deliver this to tablets and laptops or desktops because the cell phone is a very small screen for what we're delivering, but it can be accessed through that as well. We also delivered it so that it can be accessed anywhere. We found when working with our operations teams that a lot of them will work at a customer site all day and not be able to connect to our corporate intranet. So we delivered it so that they can access these tools on any device and any place that has an internet connection. Navigation we decided to do both visually and with text and use both a title and a thumbnail. Because for a lot of people, you may or may not remember what's the Kelly channel, what's talent supply chain readiness paper, but you'll always remember it visually. So visual was a key for us. So we set up these nice carousels of thumbnails to go along with the titles. So on our initial page here, what we're actually showing is sort of the landing page where it has all the reference documents you need to really understand the site. So now I'm going to go into some of the different areas, and I'll start first with rate analysis here, or rate compliance here. Rate analysis, sorry. It's hard to see from this angle. I'm not used to presenting it quite from this angle. And so our rate analysis page presents to you a number of different dashboards that you can look at and click through. And it delivers all kinds of capabilities. I don't have time to talk through each one of the capabilities, but just to kind of show you what we can do with it, I'll show you our spend and
And just to clarify, so what Mark's popping up, so we have Tableau embedded in HTML here. So now he is launching a Tableau dashboard from the HTML website.
And so the way we decided to build these is to build it with a consistent look and feel. So whatever we built, we wanted it to be very familiar. So we used the same style each time so that as people look at each of these visualizations, it's very intuitive how to use it. So that each time we deliver a new one and place it on the site, there's not this big learning process to figure out how to use it. You simply can arrive to it, say, gee, take a look, and it needs to be able to pop out to you and say, this is what's available. And to kind of lend ourselves to that, we put these tooltips on each one that give an explanation of what the visualization is. They'll tell you how the calculations are made and give you like a brief use case on maybe how you want to use it. Then across the top, we put a series of filters because while it may be interesting to look at 70 programs and all their head count and spend together, realistically, you're probably interested in maybe yourself and one or two competitors. Because you want to see yourself as you compare against other people in your industry, be it oil and gas or life sciences or something like that. And just kind of what you see on this dashboard here represents trends within headcount and spend. So how we've trended over time, and you can see in both we've grown nicely, but the actual data you're seeing here today isn't. It's just for our demo purposes. So this one here is value versus volume. This is how we use some of our geographical data. And when you see it come up, I'll speak to more of it, but one of the capabilities that we really liked about this tool that we were able to deliver is the ability to benchmark and compare. Prior to this, when you're looking at data in a single system, you can't see yourself relative to others. So a lot of times it's difficult to say, what is a good cycle time? What is a good rate? What is a good supplier fill rate, hit rate, response rate? You don't know. So one of the beautiful things about this is we can show you and how you compare to others, and you can get a sense in your mind of, oh, I need to fix this area, or hey, I do this really well. And so on this one here, we just show some of our map data, which is we're using colors for density. We're using people to show on here where we have active headcount and people working today. And then we've got it here to show kind of how rate compliance works relative to what we've broadcasted as what we want to hire people for.
Yeah, Mark, if you can, so if you, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with or users of Tableau, so if you go back and mouse over the map, it'll show you, it'll give you a little graphic, but then you can right click and you can get down to the detailed data and pull it up and dump it to a spreadsheet. Something good for our, I mean, you can look at the high level aggregation, but they also want to say, okay, I see a red flag there. I want to get to the underlying data, and you can do that very quickly. There's the underlying data.
Yeah, so that's the beauty of it, is you can have it all the way at the very highest executive level, and then you can drill down all the way to the very lowest, most detailed row of data you'd like to see. So if there's something that's interesting to you, you select it, filter it, and say, hey, these are the guys I want to give awards to, and then select and filter and say, these are the guys we need to work with. So one of the things that we noticed after building this is some of the interesting use cases. So we build some and not understand quite how it could be used at the time, but as we started to use them, they would evolve. And one of the great things that we're doing with it is visual discovery. So one of the ones I want to show you are supplier ones. So, intuitively for me, when we're thinking about how we staff people, we generally send out a request, and we might send out a request to 100 suppliers and say, hey, we're looking for one IT personnel. And in my mind, you would get a pretty good response rate because you've got 100 people working on it at once, right? But actually, when we're starting to look at our data, we're seeing some of our hunches like this or some of our intuition is actually wrong. And then we can begin to see and understand why. And we finally figured out when talking with our suppliers and having these conversations, you can see here, the more suppliers we're posting to, the worse our response rate is getting. And when we started to talk to our suppliers and understand why is it, you're saying, well, when I'm a preferred supplier and you send it out to 3 people and there's only 1 position we're filling, we're all working very hard at that. We're all working because we've got a great chance to fill it. So it's actually changed how we do some of these things because we didn't understand this before. And so this is one of the great ways we've been using is in terms of visual discovery.
Yeah, just to add on to that, so if you think about, the way we were reporting before is you get an Excel spreadsheet with 1,000 lines on it. What do you do with that? So this turned data into actionable information. What they found was counterintuitive, but only because you saw a picture of it. Say, well, geez, you'd think if we posted to more suppliers, we'd fill it faster. To Mark's point, but we found out that wasn't the case. But the data didn't necessarily tell you that. You had to see it first, and then you went to your supplier and say, why don't you reply to well, if I'm one of 100, I'd rather work on something where I'm one of 5 suppliers that's bidding on getting that business. So.
Yeah, if I had to look at 1 million requisitions last year in an Excel spreadsheet, I'm not finding that one. And then I'll walk you through one maybe last use case here. And this one is, this one's on our cycle time analysis. So one of the ways we've used this before is just to kind of see, for us a cycle time is all the steps in the process from broadcasting out, we're looking for people to all the way up to the time it takes to fill. And the way we've used this before is to kind of look at and say, hey, we see these different areas of labor category, engineering, law, IT, and you can see generally they all fall in the same area. But when we'll compare them to customers, we'll see real quick, hey, there's areas in maybe law or engineering where there's actually 40 days outside of the norm. So instead of taking 25 to 35 days, it'll be taking 80 days to fill these orders. And one of the interesting things is we can go right from this and tell a story with this data. Because you can go from there and say, okay, look at that customer. Why is he so far outside of the norm? And then you can take it and go and look at another one and start to do an analysis and say, hey, maybe he's taking longer because he's got rates that are lower than normal. And you can go in here and find out immediately by comparing him to his peer group. Let's see. I've lost it. Oh, there it is, actually. I found it very quickly. It's the pictures. Remember I was saying about the pictures? That's how I found it. But, and the one that comes up here, so sort of randomizing the data doesn't help us out much with actually walking through this use case. But you can see in this scenario, this person is actually much higher than their comparative vertical. In life sciences, they pay much more. But if you looked at them in terms of just pure dollars, sure, they pay a median bill rate of $54. That's actually much higher than some of the high tech or consumer goods and services. So if you were looking at them in absolute terms, you may not notice that. It's only when you look at them in their comparative segment that you can see, okay, they're getting some great fill rates because they pay so much more. And we could go and start looking at retention around that too and say, hey, are they lower because of that as well? How are we doing for time? Can we do one more?
Yeah, we'll probably do one more and then leave some time for questions. One more thing I'd add, so as Mark pulls up these dashboards, they're actually going against our live tableau server. So this isn't a demo that's sitting on his laptop. This is live production, although anonymized, going over the internet.
All right, so here's another one I like, supplier performance across programs. I like this one a lot because it's a capability we didn't have before. So here we're comparing people across a program. And you can see this is for a single, customer.
No, it's
So
for all customers.
it's for all customers, and you can kind of see where they're at. And as you select through customers, you can begin to see which ones have great hit rates and great response rates. Because you may broadcast to 100 suppliers, but if none of them ever respond and none of them give you great candidates, that's not a very good supply chain. So you can look at this very quickly and start to compare them. And then when you go and say, well, gee, I want to change up my supply chain, I got to do that, you can go in here and say, well, show me the award-winning suppliers. And we can present to you, again, across all our programs, where your suppliers are falling in your program, like how well are they responding to your ask for a person, and how well are they actually filling that position. So, you know, we'll probably keep these guys up here who respond a lot and fill a lot. Maybe we toss out this bottom half, and that could be easy as say, that 50%, we're getting rid of them. Who are they? They're the people that are about to appear under here. And this is the list of them right here that we want to get out. And then we can say, gee, you know, now I know who I want to remove. Who do I want to add to my supply chain? Well, here we go. Here's our award-winning suppliers that are not in the J&J program. And you can select them. Oh, if I could select them. You can highlight them and then real quickly get an entire list of customers or suppliers that are not in that supply chain and say, let's go have a conversation with them because we're thinking about adding to the supply chain. Apparently it's only when I click on one. But either way, you get the use case, and it's a very simple way to do what we want quickly. Because before this, how would you know who a great supplier is? All right, so that kind of concludes our demo here.
You can pull up the deck again just to write it down. Back to it.
And so, just to kind of speak to that again, we built that out with a combination, like Dan was saying. We're using a combination of an HTML web page that's built in with some JavaScript, and that handles all our navigation and gives it that real snappy look and feel. And you saw how those white boxes come up, those iframes are called. That's to give you consistent sizing for when you're using it on like a Surface or an iPad or something like that. But the beautiful thing about it is, we don't do any configuration to make it work with those tablets. It automatically works as part of the native capabilities of Tableau. When it shows up, you don't see filters that you would have to click with a mouse and drag down. It's built for your fingertips, and that's really what's nice about it. So how much Tableau? We've got 100 server users right now, and that's our operations people who sit every single day and talk with our customers. We've got 12 Desktop Pro for our development group, and we've got 20 Desktop Personal for a combination of prototyping and doing, you know, their own personal things. So how Tableau helped? Tableau's helped us go to market. It's showing that we know analytics. Kelly Services is great at staffing, but this is showing that one of our core competencies is more than staffing. It's actually showing that we know analytics. So I'm getting short on time here, so I'm going to skip through some of this at the end. But one of the things I wanted to read was this quote we've got here from itbusinessnet.com. And it says, through the alpha release of their talent supply chain analytics portal, Kelly OCG says its frontline operations managers are saving a minimum of 10 hours per week on reporting and can now use that time to share insights, benchmarks, and best practices with clients. So think about that. 10 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, that's 500 hours not spent building reports, but analyzing data, having conversations with customers, and delivering insights. That's big for us. So that presents us all with all kinds of new opportunities and focus. And I think that about wraps it, so we can do some Q&A.
Questions? Anything else you wanted to see? Yes?
Yeah, the question. So for your clients, your customers, they don't get directly into this. It's always through one of your salesmen reviewing it with them.
Today, but the stated desire from our business is that at some point you give direct access and login access to our customers. So we're looking at options for that today. We can deliver that today if we so choose. We may not want them coming in through our firewall. Now, right now, this is sitting in our DMZ, so they could, but there's also Tableau Online or Tableau Cloud, David, that's hosted in the cloud. So that may be an option for us if we want not to deal with the headaches of managing logins and passwords and segmenting data so that one customer doesn't see another customer's data. So yes, it's possible and it's on our roadmap. We're trying to finalize some of this and roll that out before we take that next bite.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I was just curious, when you guys do a discovery, whether you're doing that against your production data set, or your UW, or what your setup is for that, and also if you have to persist structures as part of that discovery work, do you do that in Teradata, do you do it somewhere else? How does that work for the new data?
So let me just make sure I understand the question. You're asking if we do our data discovery in production itself?
In Teradata in production, right? Or you use a separate instance or workload management or some other mechanism to kind of constrain that work?
So some of our data discovery is done at the outset as we work with the sort of those VMS front office tools at the customer. A lot of it though is done once we build something. So we've got separate environments, dev, SQA, and production. So as you build in dev, you may discover it there. We haven't set ourselves in a single spot where we do it. We're doing it as we build, we're doing it as we do UAT, and we've got operations people looking at it. But we're going through a pretty continuous evolution.
So I guess I was trying to ask, when you're doing discovery work, and part of what you do that against is your production data set, along with some new data that you're using that's potentially new in the environment that's coming in, do you do that against production Teradata, or do you do something else? Maybe you're not doing that, so that was my question.
Yeah, so the question is, are we using external data and joining it with our production data?
Right.
Yes, we definitely do that. So some of it's sourced outside of it, and you can, one of the capabilities of Tableau is that I can take a production data set and right in there, grab an Excel extract of something, join them together, and play with them there.
So you mash it up in Tableau?
Yeah, mash up in
Create
Tableau.
structures in Teradata.
But right now we've got a couple external data sets that we've said, hey, we like this is interesting, and we've placed it in our production database.
Okay.
So eventually, once we got past that proof of concept stage, we said this is what we want, this is how we use it, and architected it to leverage it in its best way.
Yeah, and right now, just to add on to that, so our current solution includes two separate database environments. So we have our Teradata database, and we've also got a SQL Server-based environment. So kind of a BI, very well managed, very structured, very rigorous in passing data in there. Then we've got what we call our analytics database, which is being able to jam new data sources in there quickly without going through, your typical processes and rigor, so that our business folks can say, hey, new data set, I don't have 3 or 4 weeks to wait for it to get into the EDW. I want it now so I can play with it. So a lot of what Tableau's pointing into today is the SQL database, and eventually we're starting discussions on when and if do we point Tableau into Teradata directly. Yes, sir.
Are you able to provide like advanced analytics, forecasting of what prices or people or need or anything like that? Is optimization in that?
Yeah, we have some of it in there around employment outlooks and things like that. So we can do some of that, but that's some of the areas we still need to evolve into.
Yeah, that's where we're looking to source third-party data from various places, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, to bring in stuff. And one of the things that Tableau also lets us do is you can change your variables. So you create your filters, you create a set of variables. You can change your variables on the fly and see your picture change dynamically. So when you're doing what-if scenarios, to say, what if I did this? What if I changed this variable? We'll change it and see how your picture changes. Is it better or worse for you? Does that answer it? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious to know what's the ramp-up time for developers to be able to produce something like this?
You want to?
Yeah, so maybe we built our first POC in 2.5 weeks with delivering 16 dashboards and the website and everything, but I would not say that's typical. I've done a couple build-outs like that, and that one was a little crazy, but.
So 2.5 weeks, like, how many resources?
Yeah, so right, so there was a lot of us all working on it at once when we did it, but from the very start of the project when we were sourcing data, that started last year and maybe January around that time frame where we started building more for this. But to build a dashboard and do the prototype, I mean, a couple hours. Like, you can build these very fast, publish them quick in your sandbox or development environments, and get people's eyes on them and say, yeah, I like this, or no, that's not right. So the big part of it is kind of getting the data in the right place so that, you know, our people have access to it.
Yes.
Yeah, so my question was about the data. So you talk about doing kind of mashups on the fly. A lot of times they're not in similar terms. How well does the tool help you with that mashup? You have, unless you do, you know, ETL or something to create the data similar, you know, regions or, you know, whatever you're using to divide your data, whatever your dimensions are.
Yeah, so there's it turns out you have to do some of that standardization. I mean, the tool will help you in things like, did you capitalize it or not? It'll clean that up for you. Around its geographical data, it does a great job of, hey, you put St. Louis instead of St. Louis, it'll grab it for you. But if you're trying to match job title program manager to project manager, you kind of have to do that outside of the tool or build some calculation inside it to take care of that for you. You know, it's a computer at the end of the day, so you definitely have to clean up some of it. But in terms of geographical, it does an amazing job. I think we're actually done on time, but if anybody else has any questions, wants to come up afterwards, I'll be here for a couple minutes. So, thank you.
Thank you.